Bernie, Gwen, we haven't yet got into Mr. Findling and what he's known for out there in Georgia and what he's said about Donald Trump in the past, which makes this hiring so curious. Drew Findling.
Well, again, he's somebody that I've handled cases and my colleagues have handled cases with. He's a skilled trial lawyer. I actually know his co-counsel, Jennifer Little, much better. But again, you've seen a little bit of their legal strategy in some of the motions that they filed prior to the indictment, some would argue prematurely. And they've revealed some of the strategies that they would deploy, certainly at this early stage. I think still, regardless of how they feel about the indictment, we have to go through the process of having all defendants turn themselves in or risk having an arrest warrant issued. The next step would be arraignments, and then certainly we should start to see the flurry of various motions as the defendants and their lawyers execute their various strategies.
Explain, if you can, what you believe their defense will be. I mean, I know we had a statement from them today talking about how what was presented to the grand jury was one-sided and that they believe some of the witnesses were politically biased against Donald Trump.
So again, the way that the grand jury system is set up in Georgia and I believe around the country is that it is one-sided. The defense or defendants are not allowed in the room, but that's because it's a very low standard. In order to move out of the indictment stage or move forward with an indictment, you only need to establish probable cause. And so obviously prosecutors know ultimately they would be required to prove all charges and the elements thereof beyond a reasonable doubt. But it is not unusual to have the grand jury process be one-sided. That's the way it works. Other possible defenses, I think many of us are waiting to see the extent to which there would be a motion to remove the case to federal court. It's my understanding the case would still proceed in state court while a federal judge decides whether there are any federal defenses that those that had federal positions, the former president as well as Mark Meadows, should be able to use as part of their defenses, whether it's immunity or other things. We've done some research on that through the Brookings report and do not believe that those would be successful arguments. But again, that's a decision that would rest with a federal judge if at some point in time, if those motions are filed.
It's not unusual, Lisa, for a high-profile case to play out in the court of public opinion, right? Not every 15 minutes, though, like we see here. And on local radio station WABC, Rudy Giuliani was being interviewed, and this is part of his defense. He just said, "I'm indicted for being his lawyer. I never thought I'd get indicted for being a lawyer."
Whoa. There's so much in this indictment that has absolutely nothing to do with Rudy Giuliani being a lawyer. Making false statements about election workers who don't have the resources to defend themselves and doing it not once but multiple times to engage in a pressure campaign on them to admit to crimes that they didn't commit, that has nothing to do with being someone's lawyer. So while that's good and well for the court of public opinion, good luck with that, Mr. Giuliani, in the real court here.
Gwen, I want to ask you about Fani Willis, whom you know so well. She's been put in the national spotlight. She's endured all kinds of threats against her and harassment, and they're only increasing, accelerating with the spotlight. You know her so well. Describe how she's dealing with this and how you expect she is going to deal with it and deal with the defendant, Donald Trump, if this persists.
Well, again, I've said before that Fani, the DA Willis, seems to have been called for a time such as this. She is a very knowledgeable, very tough and experienced prosecutor. And however this may be wearing on her personally, you will not see that. She is focused. She recognizes the obligation and opportunity that serving as the elected district attorney presents in this moment. And she is not going to let the citizens and residents of Fulton County down. She and her team are focused, but they are focused on the facts and the law and understanding what they need to do to be able to put this case together and present it to an ultimate jury at some point in the future. So again, unfortunately, many of us who have had high-profile cases have had to deal with attacks, certainly not anything to the level of that she's dealing with. But sadly, that has become part of the job. And the best you can do is ensure your own safety, your family's safety, ensure the safety of your staff, your witnesses, and those that are in the courthouse. And I think from the letters to the sheriff, we've seen her do exactly that. And the letter that she wrote to her staff, we've also seen her take the high road. She is not going to be distracted. She's not going to get in the dirt and fire back. She's focused, as well she should be, on the integrity of this case.
Lisa, let's look ahead to next week when Donald Trump is supposed to appear. He is going to be booked, right? Is that the term I should be using? Sure. Processed. He's not going to be arraigned, though, and that differs from what we've seen in the past. Doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. He's not going to be arraigned at all, is what you're saying?
That's what one of our guests said a little bit earlier. I said the arraignment would come a little bit later.
Well, the arraignment will come a little bit later. I'm sorry. The surrender and the arraignment are... I wasn't sure I understood.
No, I'm sorry. It's been a long 4 hours.
Yes, it's been a long week already, right? The surrender and the arraignment are two different things in the Georgia system. Usually in the federal system, we see them sort of happen together.
Yeah.
So it remains to be seen when he'll be arraigned. I'm sure we'll all be watching rapidly when he is.
Lisa Rubin, thank you very much.
How lucky are we, can I just say, to sit with the people that we get to sit with? And I do hear it sometimes from family and friends about, they want to know about Lisa. They send me compliments about the people we sit with. We're very fortunate.
I think we're most fortunate because you wanted to be a lawyer at one point. Your dad thought you should be. I wanted to be a lawyer at one point. We get to be going to law school, essentially.
This is as close as we're ever going to be.
No, but it's learning.
It's learning, and I think we talk about it all the time.
I just have to thank Gwen Fleming Keys.
Oh, sorry, Gwen.
I'm sorry. And Lisa Rubin, thanks to both of you for that. Actual lawyers. And let me just say, to be with you is such a privilege, but also to cover some of the players here. And I've been struck with what Gwen had to say about her friend Fani Lewis. And I was reading up about Fani Lewis. She went to Howard, an HBCU, a member of AKA. She then went to Emory University Law School. And the accusations that she is a racist are particularly offensive, but coming at her, it's one level that, Jack Smith hasn't endured coming from Donald Trump. But these strong black women standing up to Donald Trump is something to behold.
And standing up to say that, I know there's a sameness that maybe some people feel, indictment after indictment after indictment, but she is showing in this indictment that many people came together in many places, in many different ways, to say your vote doesn't count. And she is standing up and saying, this is what we believe we can prove, and it matters.
And while what we read in these indictments is overwhelming, we should remember that this is the prosecution's case. The defense will have a chance to respond and present their own evidence. We will see what they have in the coming weeks, months, perhaps
and not just years. In the court of public opinion.
Chris and Andrea, thank you very much. That's going to do it for us this afternoon. I'm Katie Tur. On behalf of all my colleagues, to everybody out there, thank you so much. MSNBC special coverage of Donald Trump's fourth indictment continues now with Nicole Wallace.
Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in the East. A Lutheran pastor in Illinois, a former publicist for Kanye West, a county GOP chairwoman, a whole bunch of attorneys, and at the tippy top, the former president of the United States of America, all of them involved in what is now described as a, quote, criminal enterprise in service of nothing less than overturning American democracy. That is how last night's extraordinary indictment of 19 people, including Donald Trump, on a charge normally used to prosecute gangs or mafia crime families, sums up the entire coup plot. Here's how Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis puts it last night.
The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.